Welcome back to the Four Podmen, the wrestling podcast we bring you each and every week on the Dynamo Podcast Network. Head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button. Anchor for the audio versions of the show. As always, if you want to contact the show or want us to discuss a topic or come on as a guest, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Joining me tonight, as always, my brothers on the Four Podmen, all four of us attached at the hip again for this episode, where we're going to take a look back on the history of, some would say, the most challenged and coveted belt at times in wrestling. Jay, talk to me. This was your idea.
It was, and it was a hindsight situation when we've spoke about so many great men who never get, the airtime they need or deserve. We talk about a foundation of excellence. When we talk about the apex of pro wrestling has always been the top title, but if you want to see workers work, workers earn, and workers live for their fucking sport, drop a title down in any division or a federation, and you will see something defended weekly by men who are great monthly. It's the IC title, baby. The most illustrious strap in the history of the business. From my personal perspective, this belt has made greats great. This belt has ascended men where they shouldn't have been, couldn't have been, or wouldn't have been, simply because the top title was not available to them at the time. Brother.
Yeah, like, how often did the IC match steal the show? On the biggest pay-per-views of the year and all that. Plenty of times.
Almost every WrestleMania.
Yeah, I suppose the interesting thing looking at it as well is when you look back at the period we're going to look back in this episode, which is 79 to 90. A number of holders of the belt, when they called the belt the gatekeeper for the world title or the WWE Championship, for a lot of these guys it wasn't. And it didn't happen for obvious reasons. So it's an interesting kind of conundrum to discuss on an episode. But I suppose we start off, in this period, there was 18 reigns. So it's an interesting time because it meant there was a lot of long reigns, old school, really, with this belt. No less with, someone we're very fond of on this show, the Honky Tonk Man, of course.
Yes.
But I suppose we kick it off. 1979, Pat Patterson. September 1st, 1979, 233 days, Pat held the belt, kicking it off initially. A man who's synonymous in the history of wrestling, really, when you think about it. And in the
impetus behind this progression.
Yeah, absolutely.
From the Montreal region, had legendary feuds with, of course, René Gauguin's, I can't pronounce French, Gauguin, his father, which of course is Rene Dupree. They had some absolutely legendary feuds, and I mean bloodbaths up there. And like the French Canadian scene was kind of almost a mob in its own right. You know what I mean? That was a pretty big fucking deal up there in that quarter. So Pat Patterson came up tough style as well.
Yeah, it's hard to believe looking back at these years that we're looking back, 79 to 90, that one Ricky Steamboat has the shortest reign in terms of days, with 65 days in total after that phenomenal match at WrestleMania 3.
Yeah.
What you thinking, Joe?
Yeah, just it doesn't really make sense. When you think of Ricky Steamboat, you think of greatness, really, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And to think that, that he was the shortest reigning Intercontinental champion of that period, I don't think he ever won a world title.
Well, he never.
The word is absurd.
Pardon?
The word is
over the
absurd.
throat injury that you spoke about last
Oh,
week.
the larynx.
But but I don't think he ever won a world title either.
No,
he did. Yeah, he did.
Did he?
Did he?
Steamboat in NWA.
NWA.
Oh, did he? Okay, sorry. But
the world's title.
Yeah. But you'd expect it. You'd expect him to have done a lot more in his career because, everyone knows who he is. You know what I mean? He's an absolute marvelous wrestler. So to hear that he's the shortest reigning champion of that time is a bit shocking. So and that match that he won it in, anyone that's worth their salt at all knows that match and knows how good it is. So
Steamboat. Steamboat.
And such a glorious and pure baby face as well.
He had a hell of a career, just not in WWE, in fairness. Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah.
But at the time in the place, if you were to turn around to your child and say, this is the guy I want you to fucking revere, Steamboat's the guy. He was just such an absolutely pure, like, when has scandal ever come out about him? Has anybody ever a cross word to say about him? Has he ever been blamed on duplicity in the locker room? He is, like, I mean, his level of pro wrestling, we're going to use this term a lot, but it was 5 years ahead of the game. And even when it wasn't, even when he came back late in his life, remember when he did that after the wrestler, the All-Star Jam versus, was it Jericho?
Yeah.
He was still on. He's still fire.
After the wrestler movie, yeah.
He's
the pro in pro wrestling.
Yeah, you know he is.
Have you ever seen a body take the steroids quite like Ricky Steamboat as well, and a man not to go home and like beat the shit out of anyone? You know what I mean? Like his body was shredded from fucking just stone. It was like Michelangelo couldn't have carved them better, and yet. No, as someone, I think it was Jay, you mentioned, there's no scandal,
no shit slung. Nobody hates Ricky. It's an honor to step in with him. You're going to get treated right. You're not going to leave broke up. There's no bullshit about him. And like I said, he was one of the first 3 or 4 guys I ever marked out for. Oh, Ricky the Dragon, to hear that music and his entrance music in WWE at the time, it was perfect. And this is before he was breathing fire. Back when he was fucking wearing headbands and he was like the Karate Kid, but he wasn't. He was.
I was told very young that he was related to Bruce Lee, so it was.
Everybody, he had that look, and he used to do that chop after he slung them off the ropes and everything. Like he was gimmick incarnate. He used
to do that. Remember the double arm chop? He used to do the double arm chop across.
Double knife edge, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And go back. He's one of those guys where his matches never tarnish. He's always just luster. He is just Ricky.
Yeah. No,
Sorry, where were we?
I heard that rumor as well, Ian, that he was related to Bruce Lee. And now I'm wondering if you actually told me it.
More than likely.
Actually, now that you mention that, when you go and you look, when you go look at the newer Bruce Lee movies, the guy who played Bruce Lee actually looks the image.
He's related to him then.
Yeah. Jason Scott Lee looks a lot like the guy who played Bruce in the Dragon Story, the shades of Ricky.
Fuck that movie as well. Fuck that movie and fuck that guy, but God bless Ricky Steamboat.
Blasphemy.
21 Bruce Lee though. Anyway, moving along now.
Yeah, let's move on. So we move from Pat Patterson onto Ken Patera.
We skipped ahead, did we?
Yeah, so Ken Patera, 231 days was his reign. And I don't remember a lot about Ken Patera back that early. Ken Patera for me came in, remember, after he did the stretch and he did the whole sort of storyline with Bobby the Brain Heenan and stuff like that. So then we move on after.
I watched one match with Ken Patera, in fairness, like as in one match properly that I was emotionally invested in, and I was at the Garden, and it was with of course the great Bruno Sammartino. So obviously at that time as well, even though he was in the IC League, you know, they would still have their matches because they were running a circus show. But good Lord, he could work, man. I mean, he it was a really great dynamic because obviously Bruno was like 5 foot, but like about 500 pounds. You know, I mean, he's just literally
the brawler, big hairy shoulders.
He was literally a cinder block with legs, like, you know what I mean? And no, but I was just saying, I watched it and it was quite. Now it wasn't a long match. It wasn't like one of those kind of mid-south matches where they'd go for a Donnybrook or they go over the hour or whatever. But they had a good solid like 15 to 20 minute match, and it was just strongman, you know, with. And it was great. I have to say, the great thing that they did back in those days, especially in Madison Square Garden, which is the Mecca, I have to say, it's just there's an ambience about Madison Square Garden when you look at, and what I love about it more so than anything, you know, there's a reason why I can sit watching Pat O'Connor versus Lutez for an hour and 20 minutes in the Garden, even though it's black and white. You can't see the crowd, but you can see the lit up Marlboro signs in the background and all. And it's just, and you can see the smoke, you know what I mean? You can see the smoke from the crowd, and it's just, it's big fight field, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for me, but there was so that's the only kind of real proper match that I've sat down and watched with.
It's like when you go back and you look at those old boxing matches, and you get that smoky stadium feel.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Mill Street.
I'll tell you a little side story. I'll tell you a little side story about Madison Square Garden. I'm one of a few Irish men that got thrown out of Madison Square Garden. I went with the lads.
Sure, there was a few disqualified in the ring, mind you.
No. This is a good one though. We were.
Doyle went over with a load of merch and tried to sell it.
We were over in Philly for the Royal Rumble, so we said we'd spend 2 days up in New York, and we, of course, do the MSG tour and all that, the history of it and all that. So we arrived and we came up out of Penn Station, which is basically nearly under Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And oblivious to us, 6 Irish lads hadn't got a clue what was going on. Streets were closed down, the whole lot. So we rock up to Madison Square Garden. You come in and then you get the scanner things like in the airport where they check you for weapons and all that kind of stuff. Went through them and walked up to like a concierge desk, and we said, we'd like to book the tour. And your man said, that's no problem. But you'll have to come back on Tuesday or whatever it was. And we were going, come back on Tuesday. And the next thing, a load of security guards came over that were like sort of FBI or CIA or Secret Service, turned us around and said, what are you doing in here? And I said, what do you mean, what are we doing in here? I said, we just come in to do the tour. And he goes, how did you even get in here? I said, well, we walked through that big door there, walked over here and asked, could we do the tour? He said, you need to leave this building now. And they escorted us out of the building. Do you know what was going on? The fucking Grammy Awards. And we fucking strolled into the building. What? The fucking Grammy Awards were in MSG that day. And we fucking strolled into the building. High-level security, limousines everywhere, streets closed down. Here we are, 6 Irish lads in the lobby, decorated out in wrestling gear. Can we do the tour? And these lads escorted us out of the building. Get out that door now. They walked out to the lads at the railings who were using the railing things. How did you let these people into this building? They were getting dressed down.
Have you not seen them?
I said to the lads, this isn't good. We just need to get out of here. And off we went on our merry way back down into Penn Station.
Sorry for getting your company fired.
Said, these fucking people. What are you talking about, these people? What about us? We built this fucking city on rock and roll.
No, sometimes you know you're scum. When you see more than the amount of your group in security, you know you're scum.
Oh no! But did you not get what I said? We built
absolutely did.
Rock and roll.
I at that time I was lacking a red shirt, a big bag of cocaine, and a clock hanging from me neck.
It's just a good job that there was no dynamo, because Ian would have been put into the back of a black fucking Mariah and probably, waterboarded, whatever the fuck you call it, like, and just I just came to see the Hulk Hogan picture, for fuck's sake. Muhammad Ali.
That's the naivety of
Muhammad Ali's
That's the naivety of us.
Lads, it's the Grammys. Fuck that. Let's find the bar.
When we walked,
we don't even watch telly.
When we walked out the Penn Station, we looked back, and there was a fucking huge banner as big as you've ever seen, with the Grammys thing on it and everything and all. But we never even noticed it walking in.
Well, you were obviously just so excited, like to it was the building. You're outside it for the first time, right? Yeah. And you're probably
who should have been more excited? Security.
Yes, that's true, Jay. You're wrong. You're not wrong there. Anyway. Back to the UFC belt.
Yeah. Let's get back to the episode.
Which too was defended in Madison Square Garden.
So we went on after Kempatera, we went on the run with Pedro Morales, then Don Morocco, and I am convinced, from my memory, if it serves me right, I reckon Pedro Morales could have been Don Morocco's dad, because they were very alike in physique and very alike in hairstyle and very alike in hairy body.
They shared a head.
It's funny with Pedro Morales. He was actually now that is someone that I have watched a lot of when I go back and study old tapes, and I watched the two men wrestle. In fact, very, very true. You know what's so funny with Don Morocco, before he came to the WWE and before he kind of really, I mean, he was always a large man, but I mean, he went super large,
huge.
But good Lord,
Huge.
man, work when you watch that guy work in Puerto Rico or work even when he worked down south or with with AWA in bits and bobs, you know what I mean, when they were doing shots. He was a really, really, really super underrated worker, and so was Pedro Morales. I mean, those Mexicans, it's like they're boxers, you know what I mean? They don't just do it to do it, like they learn the craft, and I think a lot of
very fluid.
Very fluid, Jay.
Fluid.
That's a great point. And Jay, when you think about it, they are like that old Bruce Lee adage of like be water, because they are trained down there to work on the right. You know what I mean? And like it's super. I would imagine, Joe, you can probably back me up on this. Imagine just having to go into a territory like at will, and then everything that you've been taught and trained to just do it on the opposite side. You know what I mean? It's not that easy, like, especially when you're doing like a contest. So these boys, like they were, as Jay likes to use the word apex, like those Mexican boys were very, very apex in the sense that they could just adapt, you know what I mean? Case in point, Rey Mysterio, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, so then we move on to 1984, one who's always a favourite of mine anyway, Arriba.
You're my bird.
Tito Santana.
Arriba!
Santana. So Tito Santana.
I'm here with Tito Santana. WrestleMania 1 in Madison Square Garden. Arriba!
If you're ever backed up, Gorilla, you go to one of Tito's cookouts. I swear to God, it'll be running out of you. Chico, my friend Chico. See the body's commentary on that, and that Chico did.
Oh, Chico.
Yeah. Unbelievable. He drops the belt to another favourite on the show here we mentioned all the time, the Hammer, Greg Valentine.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit about those two just for a little minute, because I don't know when they're going to get their own episode. So, like, in terms of Tito Santana, right, I'm just going to set the narrative, and I'm going to let Jay, Joe, and Noel run on this. Tito Santana, in my opinion, one of the most underrated workers, though, of all time.
Only other man to work the first 9 straight WrestleManias was.
Yep.
Is that not perfect for Tito? I mean, we talk about accolades in this business. They can strap all the gold they want to you, but if you ain't selling and you don't have to trust your boss, you ain't going fucking nowhere. Many men have come and gone. Chico is forever. He is a good human, a good wrestler, a solid. We spoke about this before. He was the Hulk Hogan of Mexico. 9 straight WrestleManias. He worked them all. Men have come and gone.
If he's ever listened to this show as well and wondered who the 2 Irishmen that were pranking him back in 2002. Sorry, Tito. It was me and the lad from the Flats, Paddy Morrow.
Do you know what?
He was the one that gave me the number.
Do me a favor. If you called up Tito, he doesn't all day long. He's another one of these men who has no shit to sling and nothing but good to say about the sport.
And made a great career for himself too, obviously, as
brilliant
a teacher after. No, I agree. Like one of my great memories of WrestleMania when I was kind of actually starting to actually know what was happening in the ring. Like I was kind of lucky as the kids that were kind of, that were watching the wrestling as I got older, like because I was throwing myself on my dad's bed all the time and fucking wrestling with the teddy bear. I kind of was like,
wardrobes.
I was like, I can actually, I said this to Joe years ago. You probably remember this. I used to be in my nanny's house, and I put an ironing board on the bed, and I'd like fall back on it and put my arms out like that because I was watching what the wrestlers were doing, going, oh, that doesn't hurt. I see what this bump thing is about. What's going on here? Like, you know what I mean? So. But one of the great memories I was WrestleMania 8, I believe, Noel. That was the was it the Pontiac Silver? No, it wasn't the Silverdome. It was remember the big open kind of. Remember WrestleMania 8 when
the Astrodome, was it?
That's the one where the Warrior came back, obviously, and Brett and Piper But I remember seeing that, and just when you were looking up and you could see the skyline, you know what I mean? It was just so amazing looking because it was like, oh, this isn't indoors, but it is indoors. And Shawn Michaels and Tito Santana had that match as El Matador.
El Matador.
I always thought that was a great match, and I don't even know if it was a great match now. I haven't went back and watched it in years, but I just remember like Michaels being like a character, you know, with Sherry, lads. You all know my opinion on Sherry. I was surprised no one mentioned it last week with the Macho Man episode, but I did really appreciate it. That he's done that show. But Sherry. Anyway, back to Chico.
Yeah. I got to meet Tito. When I went to WrestleMania 25, I went to the fan access, and a little story. We met up with a couple of guys there, and there was different queues forming for like Brian Kendrick and stuff like that. But Tito was at a table with Vicky Guerrero, and I remember two of the guys turned around to me. We were there was no real queue, it was a short queue. But Tito was there, dressed immaculately as he could. He was in kind of beige slacks and a kind of a yellowy beige shirt. And he had those thick Roy Orbison glasses on him. Yeah. And the hair was still the same, exactly the same.
Full head of hair. Like.
Yeah, and I remember two of the boys going, something like, oh, Christian and Brian Kendrick are over here. We better jump into this queue. And I said, do you know who that man is? And he went, no. I said, well, you need to fuck off over to that other queue then. And I went straight up. And I went straight up to him. And we got a little video somewhere as well going, the two of us going, Arriba. And it was brilliant. And I got to meet him, and he's an absolute gent. I sat there, I think for about 10 minutes, I stayed there chatting away to him because there wasn't much of a queue. But he was absolutely endearing and brilliant.
Do you know the way, Noel, they say that everything is behind the eyes? You can tell a human being by their eyes. And I firmly believe that as well. Doesn't that man just have kind eyes, like, you know what I mean? Even in his old age.
He's a teacher. His current occupation is teaching children. Look, there's very rarely I can remember popping for people who I shouldn't have popped for, and I always pop for fucking Tito. And you know, even as a child, I wanted him to do well. And when the Can-Am failed and I was given Strike Force, I was so happy.
Yeah.
So happy. I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, so I'm taking
Get
that.
them. Like, he's the guy we deserved. We got Hogan, but we needed him. You know?
Did you ever see that? I think we said this on the podcast before. Did you ever see that that famous story? Tito actually talked about it. It's on a shoe. And there's a picture going around now. Dynamite Kid forgot his gear one time. And Tito lent him his gear. You've probably seen it. And it's like Dynamite Kid in the Strike Force boots and the white tights. It's like, what's this?
And I always used to love his trunks, and I had the little sombrero on it.
Yes, sombrero.
So good. Just a little
his
touch.
Heritage. He loved it. Like, I mean, most men would say, I don't want to be the matador. Tito was like, give me what I need. Yariba. I will entertain these people. I will always be brilliant. I
still have the Hasbro, believe it or not.
Fantastic.
But Jay has said it about other wrestlers in the past. I think it can be said for Tito as well, that he puts the pro in pro wrestling.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever seen him have a bad match.
Agreed, Joe.
Always solid as a rock.
I'm very unsung.
I agree, Joe. That's a great point, actually.
Absolutely. So then we move on. We move on to. You're not getting away from him yet, lads. We move on to a second reign in 1985. 217 days for the man. And then, of course, this is when the title turns absolutely madness, and the torch is passed to one, Randy Macho Man Savage. My memories of that match were kind of indifferent, really, because I love Tito and the foreign object and the lift over the ropes and the stealing of the belt. I just thought it was like,
exquisite moment.
I was heartbroken though for Tito, you know.
But Noel, one thing though, cup of coffee in the big time here.
So Macho, 414 days that reign was. And obviously we know it came to an end with one Ricky the Dragon Steamboat at WrestleMania 3.
You can tell how long that reign was because he actually shined the patina and the fucking finish off the belt. When you look back at that dirty belt and it's not dirty and it's not shiny in the middle, It's because Macho just said, "I'm shining that baby."
And the little bit of red on the writing as well. The one time that I had the bit of red, yeah.
Shout out to all the collectors who buy their dirty belts that ain't dirty. That's Macho.
Oh yeah.
So you can see as we move down through the years here now, the excitement is beginning to build.
I know, I'm leaning forward more. Yeah. I'm leaning forward. What's going on?
You're off the couch. Joe's getting excited. Jay is animated as hell.
Woo!
We know what happened after Steamboat. It went to our favourite man in the jumpsuit, the honky tonk man.
I'm going for a piss.
454 days.
2 years, basically, as he said. Longest reigning Intercontinental champion of all time. I mean, did he even defend it often? No.
He didn't need to.
Never. Yeah, I mean, like, let's actually talk about Honky, because obviously we want to keep this lit for Jay when he comes back with whatever concoction he's got. I'll start off and then Joe can follow me on here. Like, Joe, do you remember a story when we went down to training one time with one Finn Balor and we brought down I got that anthology CD. Do you remember that? And Joe has a terrible memory anyway. Joe has a
great CD.
So I brought down the anthology CD, right? And Fergal and Paul used to have like a CD player there. Like, and they'd have it sometimes on in the background that have music. And I brought down this anthology CD. And so Jay, don't worry, I'm going to tell you. I'll fill you back in, right? So we went down to training one time, right? And we had and Fergal, Mr. Finn Balor, like first ever Universal Champion. This will show you how much the honky tonk man means to people. We went down, I'd bought the anthology CD, right, in Golden Disc or something like that when it came out, ordered it in specifically. And it was the 3 CD gimmick. And we went down and we were going through the music. And of course, Balor, when the Warrior music is on, he's like, he's a big fan. But when the honky tonks music comes on, but there's Paul Tracy just sitting there going, "We got along, I burned them, my hair clear back, go do your down in my big Cadillac." We were literally, and then I think at one point, Fergal was like, "Right, lads, we have to start fucking training." But point I'm making is, honky tonk is one of those institutions as a wrestling fan that, as a gimmick, even though as a kid, you're not really minding him because you're like, he's a fucking idiot. I never even see him wrestle. He just keeps coming out in these jumpsuits. But once again, like the Macho Man who had different suits all the time, this man, and we need to spend time talking about honky tonk because he's so important in the conversation when we're talking about the IC belt. Every week, I mean, my personal favorite was his light blue number. Just got to say, because he always had the dark boots on underneath it as well. They were his blue suede shoes, or his blue shiny shoes in his case. Just such emphasis on his look, you know what I mean? The guitar never changed, and that was great. And he always threatened you with the guitar. Like, sometimes he wouldn't do it, but he threatened you with it. But what a great, like, Wayne Ferris, obviously cousin of Jerry the King Lawler, comes from,
and the better wrestler.
Well, that's
sorry, more enjoyable wrestler.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, there you go. But like, obviously he don't, but somebody as well that got out of that Memphis bubble and went up and spent a lot of time in Calgary as well and learned the craft with Stu, went to Mid-South and kind of done the territories and actually knew what it took to get over. It's a very interesting story for anybody that hasn't kind of really watched, the rise and where the honky tonk man came from. It's really, really interesting.
He worked every shithole and piss pot.
He did.
He took every booking and continued to do it long after men were making way more money than he was. He was continuing to work indies, and he turned up wherever you needed a honky tonk man. He turned up full 100% honky.
And that's the reason I mentioned that, Jay, because like, you get a lot of people saying, "Oh, he was just a gimmick." No. He had a gimmick that meant that he could take nights off, which isn't that the dream, right?
If you want a reference, just watch On the Road with Honky Tonk Man. It's an absolute belter of a DVD. There's a part in it where he's sitting in the locker room and they're doing a show out on a beach, so they have to bring him out on like a golf buggy to the
yes.
And all he's sitting in the locker room getting ready because I think he's in the main event. It's a little indie promotion or something, you know, on a beach. And it's at a carnival as well, which is fitting, you know. And all the lads are coming back and they can't see because every time they bumped in the ring, they were getting sand in their eyes. So they're all coming back blinded. And Honky Tonk says, I have a solution for that, boys. And they were going, what's your solution? Stop fucking bumping. This is what he said. Absolutely. And I just thought, absolutely outstanding.
Spoken like a true veteran of the game, right? And
you can just imagine these 6 or 8 indie lads sitting in the locker room. Their eyes burnt out and from bumping all over this sand from the beach. And he says, just stop bumping.
What are you, stupid?
Yeah. Just lads, watch it. It's phenomenal. You know what I mean?
Oh, it will.
But in terms of yeah, Joe, go ahead.
Sorry, just on what you said earlier, Ian, about him being very important for the IC title. And he was important in general because he proved you didn't have to be taking bumps night after night to get yourself over.
Yeah.
And not just that, to get a title over as well. Because it got to the point, because he held on to it for so long and did so little with it. Right? And like on paper it sounds terrible. You're just like, he did nothing with it, but yet the title was huge because every single human being wanted to see him lose it.
Are you not entertained?
Exactly. And they couldn't wait for him to lose it. And then we all know what happened when he lost it. Like the whole fucking world lost it.
But I remember on that DVD as well, the promoter turned around to him and says, it's okay because the guy who's cleaning the ropes with the towels and all, he's going to sweep the ring after every match. And Honky turns around to the promoter and goes, you're not paying me enough.
Yeah.
Just brilliant. Like it's so good. And he's just turning around with this guy in a car going to different indie shows and ripping the piss. But it's On the Road with Honky Tonk Man. Check it out, anyone listening or viewing.
And also, as a caveat to that, he's another one of these where, like, you could argue about men being fortunate enough to fall into a career which suits who they are as a human. I honestly believe if anything had been placed on the feet of Honky Tonk and he'd have ran with the ball, he could have been any he wanted. He was so entertaining. It's just like a word from Honky and you're in. You're like, even the fact that we call him Honky and not Wayne, you know what I mean? He's a ridiculous son of a bitch. And what glorious ridiculousness it was and is. Even now, even watching his the shoot side of his career, he's gone from this guy who's talking preposterous stories about Rick Rude had no dick to, well, what am I going to do? Take a bump? My baby daughter needs new shoes. He's a breath of fresh air.
And he's, like he said, he's talked shit about everybody.
Everybody. He's a rock and roll doll of pro wrestling.
He's kind of like South Park in the sense that he's the only pro wrestler, you know, in the world that can get away with talking shit about someone, but then go. Because I remember even like after Bret Hart had the stroke, he's like, "Hey Bret, you got the stroke? You're feeling a bit like that." And I was like, "Oh, good Lord, Honky, you son of a bitch! Why would you say that?" And then like he's on Bret's DVD 3 weeks later. Bret was a great guy. I fucking love him. You know, you're like,
but see the thing about Honky Tonk, when you hear them throwing people under the bus and taking the piss and all, it's never with any kind of badness, you know, that kind of.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about a man after a stroke,
but that's kind of his way of enlightening a situation rather than.
I guarantee you, Bret probably saw
like a dark comedy.
You know what I mean? That's probably a little. They probably hung out on the road.
Yeah, listen.
Let's have that. You know?
Yeah, there's almost a kayfabe. Like we always speak about work inside of work. It's like, well, if he's still talking shit about me, well, there's a reason he's on my DVD because he's keeping my name in the loop.
Yeah. I think, Ian, that's that same interview, Ian, where he talks about Brett with the stroke and stuff like that as well. That's the same one where they asked him about Montreal. And he goes, the whole thing was a fucking work.
I'm with him.
Yeah, because do you remember even in the what was it, the Wrestling with Shadows DVD, he's in the limo. Yeah, this is a fucking bullshit. This is fucking bullshit. Fuck me. This is while it's all happening. He's there with the boys.
And he has the biker jacket on him. And he's in the back of the limousine. He's going, you need to fucking show him, Brett.
Yeah, like literally, it's like Wayne Ferris going, now, Brett, you need to fucking show him. Fuck him.
Like, yeah, listen. So talk about the inside humor. I mean, you've talked about his cousin being the king of Memphis wrestling. Yeah. His gimmick being the king of rock and roll. It's like, who's the real king now?
This is true.
Like, there's two things that are true. One, the world will end, and two, it'll be honky tonk with the cockroaches after the nuclear Armageddon. And Honky will not be putting those roaches over in shoot interviews. I'm like, give it a good go, but I won.
Like, brilliant.
Anyway, he is pro wrestling.
This is turning into the Honky show.
It's the strap, baby. It's that strap.
But it does
put around waists.
It does need to be spoken about, and I think, like, in closing for me, anyway. Like, it's interesting when you hear Honky talk about Hogan and Warrior. Like, he puts both of them over constantly. Like, he says it. He goes, without Hogan, none of us got fucking paid. You know what I mean? That's a fact. And he goes, and the Warrior, he goes, that was easy work for me to do that because I knew it was the right thing to do because I got fucking paid. And
because I didn't have to put over that other son of a bitch.
No, well, he loves Hogan, to be fair. That's the one thing that
he was talking about Brutus that night.
Well, everyone hates Brutus. That lad has no backbone. Anyway, move along.
Right, so let's move on, Jay. Jay, if I turned around and said, get someone out here, I don't care who it is. And the next thing, the music hits, and we're off and running with the Ultimate Warrior.
Spider-Man in the background.
Spider Warrior.
What are you gonna do with life when it offers you up something like that? When you've got one cartoon character defeating the other, and
the worker belts become something different for a moment.
It used to be the hard graft belt, and then it was the easy money belt. Overnight, over 13 seconds, it became a ticket to the top. You know,
didn't it make sense though?
It absolutely made sense. It made sense that it took that belt. When we talk about the work amalgamation of the South American Championship or whatever it was, the Southern, and there was another thing that was put to make it Intercontinental. North American strap and the South American or Southern American.
It was the South, the South United States they tried to call it rather than the Southern.
Yeah. But you know, two territories that really never existed in a company rewriting its own history. To hand it to that man is like sending it to the moon. And anybody who wore it after that, it used to be the weekly grey wrestling belt, and it was after that. But every so often, it has this little blip in its career where it elevates 2 or 3 ranks up simply because something comes with it. We are offered it. We cannot help but fall in love with it. And here we are, fucking 25 years later, still talking about it.
Well,
it is it.
I'm going to, and Jay, you can play off me now a little bit because I remember this like as well as you do because this was my jam. Like, I mean, I was well old enough to be knowing what the fuck was going on here. I could see what the company was doing and what the bookers were doing from the point of view that if we put the workers belt on him, we're going to put him with workers that are going to get him ready for the inevitable showdown and then for the inevitable run. That's the fucking that's the vision, long-term vision. Perfect. Rude. I'm not going to say anymore. Those two in particular that he worked with, and very much so in particular, Rick Rude, the matches that they had, the cage match when he wore that beautiful black.
Yeah, they took green and made green.
Yeah, exactly. And you could see they're like, right, we're going to try and get this kid ready for this shit. And yeah, Rick Rude bet the bollocks out of him a number of times in the locker room, but hell, he went out.
Allegedly.
But they went out.
Apparently, they were very good friends.
Well, then maybe that's why you bet the shit out of him. Sometimes you pick on your own friends.
Sometimes a work inside of a work, and a rumor goes further than the truth.
Yeah, possibly. But either way, the matches themselves, I mean, you could see the Warrior starting to get a bit of flexibility in his game here. Like you can see
he was becoming a wrestler.
Yes, as close to he can be a wrestler is exactly what it was. Like we said.
Oh no, he definitely is. Not as close to. He was very the wrestler.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like Sting was the wrestler out of that duo. Do you know what I mean? He took to it like a duck to water because he had an athletic background. We've mentioned this before. But I think the Warrior deserves all the credit in the world because he did learn how to work within his own strengths. And I think that's what people don't realize. People expect the Warrior to kind of be the fucking catch-as-catch-can style wrestler. No, because that's not his gimmick. If people see that, that's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. You know, it's the same way that we all
definitely learned that he was half the dance.
Exactly. Like we all know Hogan could work as a wrestler because he came from the old school. As you mentioned, Jay, on the Savage episode, like, yeah, you could see in Japan when he was working with the likes of, you know, I don't know, whether it be any of the Japanese guys, you could see that he could actually work to an extent and do moves that you wouldn't expect out of Hogan. But do people really want to pay in America to watch Hogan do that? No. And it's the same with the Warrior. Now, I was watching Warrior doing German suplexes on Rick Rude, no butters, and you could tell Rude was selling. Boom. That's what you're doing. Rude is coaching him, and Perfect is coaching him. And I think putting the IC belt on Warrior was a genius idea, personally, and especially what it meant going into of course, the big show in 1990 in Toronto.
And as far as long-term storytelling, it was a must.
Yes.
It had to happen.
Yeah.
And not only that, the men who wore it before him wore pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Everything above that belt wasn't. It was marquee value spotlight. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Top ticket sells the bottom ticket. And the fans who watch to get to the penultimate appreciate. And they're your next generation fans. You can't just throw something into the eater and expect it to get over. You can't. There has to be a work behind it for it to get over.
And that was the build. Putting gold on Warrior was the build, because he's got gold.
It legitimized him.
Yes.
Yeah. And he shouldn't have been there. Honestly, look, if I was a coach in any team, like, he shouldn't have had it. He didn't deserve it. But the men who he was dancing with were exquisite. And ironically, Rude wasn't in the business that long before Warrior. Rude, I think, only got in 82, 83. I think Warrior got in 83. It was a year between them. But one was, again, if you want to make a sandwich, you have to have several ingredients.
Yeah,
you can't just have one. I mean, you just can't put a slice of ham between two slices of ham and call
it
a sandwich.
Rude obviously got into it because he obviously had a proper athletic background. He was a footballer, but also he was an amateur.
Yeah, well, some of them are natural athletes, like the likes of Brian Pillman, who.
And he was obviously with Hennig, right? You know what I mean? The two boys had kind of
another natural athlete.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you, Jay. Like, I mean, and I'm gonna go to bat for the Warrior here in this as well. Fuck anyone that says anything bad about the Warrior. I'll say that.
Nobody gets to. Nobody gets to.
But anybody that doesn't get what they're doing here doesn't get professional wrestling. It's quite clear. It's the same lad.
Yes, it's a stew.
It's the same people that don't get, Ryback at the time he was being pushed in WWE. They're pushing him, because he's got a look. He just happened to not have the charisma and was like a fucking geriatric Warrior and Goldberg. And people didn't know what, like an epileptic version, should I say, would be the better way.
Yeah.
But that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, apart from the run of Savage and stuff like that, there's moments in there where the belt actually is the gatekeeper for the world title, and it's kind of obvious when you go back through your history. The Savage one was obviously one time, and then you look at obviously the honky passing to Warrior, and then Warrior with Rude and Warrior with Perfect and all and stuff like that. That elevated him then into that position, the work that those men did to bring him along that path. And it's very significant in wrestling history.
But it's kind of like they're trying pieces though, Niall, as well. They're trying pieces. Like, so there's X amount of people that can hold the IC belt, right? So you can try different elements and different pieces within your roster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to think of this like a football team. And you're trying different
Yes, it's like a probation.
Roster.
Exactly. What you got, son? Yeah.
Exactly. What have you got? Right. Okay. Now I can see, yeah, you're absolutely phenomenal there, Perfect. Or you're phenomenal there, Rude. But to be honest with you, we're just not ready for a heel champion yet. So I think we're going to go with this guy and we're going to try this. However, what you can do is you can work with this young kid and you can fucking help, mold him into a position where when he does get to that main event level or to that main event that we put him in, he's going to be ready for that 30 minutes that we require from him. And to be honest with you, that's exactly what it was. And I think that whole build-up with the Warrior and Hogan, the fact that they never laid a finger on each other other than a shoulder and kind of stood toe-to-toe and looked at each other, to be honest with you, that's the best build-up WWE have done probably ever.
It's a 3-year program.
Yep.
I suppose
probably the best. Yep.
Yeah, I suppose you could look at the Warrior winning the belt off Hogan at that time is probably as much of a tipping of the hat to the work rate of Rude and Perfect and stuff like that as it is for Warrior as well.
That's why I mentioned it. Yeah.
So it's
and even Hunky mentioned it. Remember when in Hunky Shoots he says, "I've been wrestling for years and still to this day the biggest payoff I ever had was that 13-second loss against the Warrior."
So I'm happy to put the motherfucker over.
Yeah, it was the match that carried my name forward and allowed me to continue to earn. Like, there's also a funny thing about the IC strap as well that I love. Have you ever noticed what happens to men who wore the IC strap when they go to another company? Just that big gold.
They win the world. Yeah.
Like in any other company, that thing is pay dirt.
Yep.
So we've mentioned Rude, obviously, and we mentioned Perfect, who had a number of
we mentioned Rude,
but sandwiched in between the two Mr. Perfect reigns, we have the one and the only, the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich.
Oh, shout out!
So shout out to the Von Erichs, of course. Short enough reign though, 84 days.
Yeah, but he had it, and nobody can take that away from him, and he earned a hard way.
Many people thought it was the Ultimate Warrior in disguise when he used to run down, believe it or not.
Oh, that was later down the pike. God bless him. That was the rumor, wasn't it? He was the second Warrior.
Yeah. So,
but you know what? Give me 1 second with Kerry. Hard life, hard path, hard worked, hard fucking earned, globally recognized. Well done, son.
With a gimmick leg as well.
So, lads, when we come back, we're going to be taking a look at the top 10 reigns in terms of days. And just a preface to that is 7 of those men have come from this period. 1. And we're back with the second half of our look back at the IC Championship 1979 to 1990. And now we're going to take a look at the list of longest reigns and in some cases combined reigns. So, men, top of the list is the one and only Pedro Morales, 619 days in total. Probably not unusual when you go back to that time where titles and belts were held as coveted items and weren't willy-nilly given away or switched at a moment's notice. So I'm not surprised that some of the longest reigns and combined reigns come from this period.
The way it should be, right?
Absolutely.
Back when the belt was the man, or the man was the belt and the belt wasn't the man.
Yeah. So we'll skip second, because second is from a different era. But in third place, with 541 days, The Rock, Don Morocco. Again, from a similar type period.
Even
if
it had been Dwayne Johnson, I would have been all right to talk about.
It'd have to be Rocky Johnson.
Both of them wish they were. Original beef.
In third place, because we're skipping second, in third place is the man that we've spoke a lot about tonight, obviously, the honky tonk man, 454 days.
With 2 defenses.
Yeah. 2 defenses and 2 defenses.
Legitimate champ.
2 defenses and 4 back bumps, all in the Warrior match.
In 13 seconds.
Next up is the one and the only Arriba, Tito Santana, with 443 days. Next on the list is a man that one Ian Kelly doesn't revere at all. So we'll give him a quick mention, but we'll move on quickly. Mr. Razor Ramon.
What's your problem with the Razor?
He did win that before 90. He won that in 93.
No, he's not on the list. That's why we're just mentioning him in that position, and we're moving on to the lads who are on.
I like Scott Hall. It's okay. I'll just rip.
Next up, of course, is from parts unknown, Jay, the Ultimate Warrior.
Never heard of him.
434 days. He's tattooed on Spider-Man's chest there behind you.
No, I want to talk about the Razor Ramon guy.
That's the next belt.
that's episode 2.
No, man. That's 90 to zeros. You'll have plenty to speak about in that era. You will. Oh, bombshell tonight. He's just a sexy boy. Where are we?
Next up after the Warrior Cross is, of course, the cream of the crop, Mr. Randy Savage. 440 days.
Big time.
and rounding out the list from this era at the bottom, but this man was a man who was never at the bottom of any list. The one and the only Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig. 406 days.
There's my champion.
What a list.
It's quite a list, and it's quite a number of days to maintain a title reign. But yeah, outstanding workers in the business, outstanding talent. Some of which moved on from the belt and went on to, I wouldn't say greater things, but bigger things.
Pastures new.
Pastures new. Pastures unknown.
Pastures aren't they unknown?
Some of the guys that you didn't mention, obviously, and like even some of the, like I heard Jay mention Sexy Boy and all, like those boys certainly didn't need to hold the IC belt for too long before
that's the next episode, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I know, but just saying, like some of them you can tell needed time with it to help get stars over, like we mentioned earlier, like the Warrior. You know what I mean? That's what their job and what their role was. The likes of Perfect and Rude. Why they didn't, I understand it from a business point of view, because you're not going to put the big gold on a heel for too long before, because as Jay likes to call him, the hot dog was still there, and you were trying to get the smaller.
That don't work for me, brother.
Yeah, that don't work for me, brother. And then you obviously have to get the young, kind of painted, feather-haired behemoth over as well.
New pop, fresh crowds, fresh seats, fresh fans, fresh everything.
Freshen it all up, yeah.
We are a business, and what we love, if it needs to continue, has to seem new.
So that's what it was. It wasn't like it was territories back in the day, and you could just, you could roil up fucking Wisconsin for fucking 3 weeks, and you could go in there and you go in there and like get them to the point where they wanted to stab you in your hotel, and then you could move on to fucking St. Louis. You know what I mean? This was national, brother.
Yeah.
So yeah, they had to have, Hogan was the established star there. He could probably lose the belt for a day or two. Fair enough, but
go off, make a movie, come back, win her off somebody.
Yeah, but it made sense from a business perspective. Still at the same time, and then obviously, with that happening, we needed the likes of the Perfects and the Rudes. Sure that the next guy coming up was adaptable for this road, and obviously that wasn't the case. But they didn't know that at that time. So
yeah, it was an outstanding. When you look back on it, it's an outstanding decade of characters. When you think about, we kicked it off with Pat Patterson, all the way through Campatera. Don Morocco, Pedro Morales, Tito Santana, Greg Valentine, all the way to Steamboat, Savage, Honky Tonk, Warrior. Rude, perfect, Kerry Von Erich. I mean, these really were the characters of the business.
The greatest hits of a decade.
Yes.
Without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt. And I suppose for us, it's probably the way we look at it. It is a little bit unfortunate that, you know, Rude didn't move on to that next level, or that Perfect didn't move on to that next level. You know what I mean? It's and Steamboat as well, I suppose.
But it makes sense though when you that's what I'm saying in this period of time, like, you know, from like 1982 roughly, when the old man kind of had this dream and brought WrestleMania 1 in, for wrestling to be the way that he wanted it. Because again, you know, I know we joke, and Jay was laughing there as well, and it's true. You know, it's easy for, you know, Roddy Piper to go into, like, you know, Cleveland, Ohio, and do like a 6-week run there where like fans legit want to stab him, and then they can get rid of him out of there and he can go and be fresh in a different territory. That's the way the territories work, you know what I mean? Whereas when you're on national TV and worldwide TV, to be fair, every single week, the reason that you have your Mike Tyson, i.e. Hulk Hogan, is because they need somebody there that is going to bring in that constant merchandise, and it's a constant stream. And the idea behind the, you know, the warrior behind that is that he's going to be the next guy that does that for the next fucking 10 years, hopefully. You know what I mean? Because he's basically, he was a young man.
Everybody can get laid. Not everybody can get everybody paid.
Exactly.
He was the next golden ticket.
And he was the next golden ticket. And that's why, unfortunately, our favorites, and like, listen, you know, for all the marks that want to go, oh yeah, but Real still should have held it. No, you don't get the business then if that's the case. That's why he didn't hold it.
Ironically, one of my favorite
he didn't hold the big gold, or the big, you know, the winged eagle. Simple.
No, ironically, one of my favorite moments in wrestling was Warrior shoulders down, even though Heenan interfered for Rude winning. That it had me. It got me. It anchored me as a child. But as an adult, when I look at it now, I look at it and I say, I'm so fucking happy the big man laid down. I don't care how it happened, because the man who was laying on top of him fucking deserved every second of that strap around his waist.
But isn't that the point that we're making though, Jay? That was.
I see somebody shaking their head. Forgive me, Ian.
Go on.
I think the word deserved is the wrong word to be used. I think he earned it rather than deserved it.
Forgive me. You're right.
It's something that pisses me off when I hear fans chanting, "You deserve it." It's like, no, they fucking earned their way there. Like, you know.
I agree with that.
And if he's got off your arses,
agree with that.
And if he's got off your arses and took a couple of bumps, you fucking realise that they earned it rather than deserve it.
Yes, sir.
That's how I feel about it.
Yes, sir.
Not arguing at all.
Yeah.
We want as much gold around Rude as can be put around Rude.
Yeah, because I don't know about you, Ian, but I know when I was training, and that was the one belt I always wanted, was the IC belt. You know what I mean? Like they all talk about how, you know, if you're not dreaming about winning the world title belt, like what's the fucking point? But it was the IC belt I always wanted.
Well, I was too busy putting you over, you motherfucker, so I don't know if you would have got there before me.
You know, so like, you know, like probably because of that, like you look back at the names that have held it, and you're just like, you know, unbelievable, huge names, and all fantastic workers. Yeah. And well, for the most part, I should say. But
whoa, that better not be a Warrior slut, you bitch.
No, not entirely. But,
he's not. Whoa.
But, you know, like, you know, for the most part, they were bloody fantastic wrestlers. And the rest of yourself, you know, you appreciate that, and that's who that was the belt I always wanted to get. You know what I mean? That was the number one.
I do remember you saying that, though. Would you agree then, Joe, what I mean by that? Like, so, like, Vince knew how good Perfect and Rude were. They're just two examples, right? Vince knew how good they were, but he also knew for his own business that, like if I'm going to do a feud with Rude and Hogan, right? Now, he could have done, and it probably would have got over. But at the same time, you could see why, from a business standpoint, that he was thinking, yeah, you know, maybe Hogan needs bigger men. That's what the Giants. Hogan.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, Ian. I was about to say they didn't have the size for
exactly. So that's all I'm thinking. So I think
also Hogan didn't want it.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Well,
don't
it's
forget
not
that.
just because Hogan didn't want it. It's because Vince.
No, it's most certainly because Hogan didn't want it. Let's not
And it's
talk about
because Vince didn't want
bollocks. Bollocks.
Jay,
If you
you're
look-
talking out your arse now. I think to be
Am
honest,
I?
you
No,
are
I'm-
absolutely.
Look into it. Look into
You're
it.
looking like a mark now.
Look
Come on,
into it.
don't be
A
silly.
oh,
You're being a mark now.
Ow,
You're being a
yeah.
mark now. Right. The reason that the likes of Rick Rude and Mr. Perfect got the IC belts and held them for so long and they'd actually trust them with it was because that was Vince's way of saying, you're those guys. You deserve that. You know what I mean?
So all of the jabronis that Hogan ran through in the 80s when he was
everything's
working,
Hogan's
he never
fault
met
in
Rude.
your case. Did Hogan
That's
ever
'cause
hold
he's
the
a
company up
scumbag.
for money?
That's
I'm
'cause
just
he's a piece of
asking.
shit.
And
He
then
did.
no
He
show.
held up my
eventually.
childhood for happiness.
Well, that's all right. You're alone there, but he didn't hold the company
Am
up and
I?
gets sacked for being unprofessional.
Well,
That's
let's
what the
talk to
Warrior
all
did.
the people that Hogan held up for.
Well, listen, Hogan made the business. The Warrior made
Oh, did
a
he?
year. He made a year.
It's a good thing
Yeah.
there was no business before Hogan.
There was, yeah, but you didn't see it.
That is definitely a debate.
Neither
for a
did
different-
you.
That's a debate,
No, I
lads.
didn't. That's why I love
No.
Hogan.
When'd you come in, son? When'd you start watching? What was
When
your first
Hogan
live
came.
match?
When
When'd you
Hogan
see?
came in.
Oh,
Well,
you-
actually, my first wrestling match was World of Sport. No, I'm speaking very clearly there. You're probably trying to do a Warrior impression there. Sorry, I missed.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Yeah, the way Hogan most this rumor that Hogan is at fault for everything is just a ridiculous narrative that comes from absolute paranoia and ridiculousness. There's a reason.
Wrestling's cancer.
So, well, why does Vince bring him back all the time?
Because he never turned state's witness against them in the steroid scandal.
Exactly.
Hogan kept his mouth shut.
Yeah.
That's why. That's why. Well, what's wrong with it is.
But he also made him. He made him. Vince brings back.
No. We've spoke about this before.
He brought back Warrior.
Well,
he held
Hogan
him for ransom at SummerSlam.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't mind getting your money. Get your money's worth.
Oh, so it's okay if it suits you. Okay.
No. It doesn't suit me particularly. I didn't financially.
No, but it suited your favorite.
From that particular incident, what I'm saying is, visually and emotionally, I was deprived of men like Rude, Perfect, Hart, and all else like them in the past by Hogan's voice hold on the sport.
That was Vince and Bruce Pritchard also. They run the show.
Pritchard wasn't around back when Hogan was running.
Bruce Pritchard was one of the main reasons behind the Macho Man and Hogan run at WrestleMania 5, believe it or not. He was part of the storyline. Yeah.
Well, that's me corrected.
Legit, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know Pritchard was around.
It was one of his, I think it was his first year, yeah. Or his first.
Could have been. I don't know.
Second
like
year.
I said.
They got him from Texas.
Well, this, lads, is going to be a very interesting debate for another episode without a shadow of a doubt.
Give me 1 second, man. Let's put it on the spot right now. Money where your mouth is. I will stay sober for the next legitimate Podmen debate if we are going to talk about what wrestling could have been before or after, with or without the piece of shit that is Hot Dog Hogan.
It's a ridiculous conversation. There's
no ridiculous conversation, only debate.
Jay, are you like the Warrior there? Are you trying to hold us up here now for a sober podcast?
There'll be no Warrior without Hogan.
We'll do it sober. Like
There'll be no Warrior without Hogan.
Since '85, we'll fucking do it sober. I hate that piece of shit, and I want.
We can't have a debate on this. But however,
heel.
I'll read. Maybe here's what I would do: is I would have a hypothetical with you, but we can't have a debate because there's no Warrior without Hogan. So.
All we can do is debate.
Exactly. But we can't debate the hypothetical.
I don't even remember what I was talking about.
Well, this has been your look back at the history of the IC belt, 1979 to 1990, plus the hate for Hulk Hogan and the love for Hulk Hogan and the love for the Warrior and the not so love for the Warrior. Until next time, man, Dynamo Podcast Network, YouTube. Obviously, like, share, subscribe, smash it, comment, let us know what you think. Anchor for audio versions of the show. And we will talk to you again real soon. Cheers, man.